Cohen admits he stole from the Trump Organization. Trump's attorney also got Cohen to admit that he'd told multiple prosecutors that story, but never pleaded guilty to that theft. Under aggressive questioning by Trump attorney Todd Blanche, Michael Cohen has admitted that he stole from the Trump Organization. Cohen sought a reimbursement from the company for $50,000 to pay a tech vendor, Red Finch, that attempted to skew online polls in Trump's favor in 2016. But Cohen gave the owner of the firm only about $20,000. You stole it from the Trump Organization? Blanche asked about the $30,000 difference. Yes, sir, Cohen responded calmly. The total theft actually amounted to $60,000, because all the sums were doubled to cover taxes Cohen might owe. Trying to raise doubts about the prosecution, Blanche also got Cohen to admit that he'd told multiple prosecutors that story, but never pleaded guilty to that theft or paid the money back. Merchant has taken the dismissal motion under advisement. Before we broke for the day, Blanche took one more shot at arguing that any alleged cover-up wasn't a criminal conspiracy. There has to be some sort of a legal objective for that charge, the defense attorney said. Years after the fact that there was a campaign donation that Mr. Cohen pled guilty to, that shouldn't qualify. Blanche suggested that whatever the prosecution is claiming is simply standard politics. You have evidence of what reporters and politicians do every day of every campaign, the defense lawyer added. Prosecutor Matthew Colangelo argued against Blanche's request for dismissal of the case, saying that prosecutors have produced evidence of the reimbursement scheme, of Trump's involvement in the false records reflecting that scheme, and of Trump's intent. The evidence that this payment was for reimbursement and not for legal services performed is overwhelming, Colangelo told Merchant. Colangelo said prosecutors have offered overwhelming record of concealment that speaks to Trump's intent and that they have presented weeks and weeks of testimony of a conspiracy that was entered into in Trump Tower in August 2015 that constitutes the underlying crime they say Trump was working to cover up by falsifying records. Merchant said he won't rule immediately on Blanche's request to toss the case at this stage. As Trump listens to his attorney Todd Blanche assail Michael Cohen's credibility in remarks to the judge, the former president has turned his entire body toward Blanche and has thrown his arm around the back of his chair. Blanche also asks Merchant to throw out the case solely because of its purported reliance on Cohen. He testified and he lied under oath in this courtroom, the defense attorney says, arguing that Cohen's testimony was replete with evident lies. The judge sounds highly skeptical that he should make a credibility determination about Cohen. You said his lies were irrefutable. Do you think he's going to fool 12 New Yorkers? The judge asks. With the jury excused, Todd Blanche is arguing that the prosecution has failed to prove its case, and he's asking Justice Juan Merchant to dismiss the charges. Blanche argues the records involved were not falsified and they weren't really business records, but his main argument seems to be that there's been no evidence that anyone raised or considered campaign finance laws. Prosecutors have sought to elevate the falsification of business records charges into felonies by tying them to alleged campaign finance violations. Blanche says, there's no evidence, zero, that anyone was thinking about the campaign finance charge in 2016 when this payment was made to Ms. Daniels. There's also no evidence anyone was thinking about a campaign finance charge when Mr. Weisselberg and Mr. Cohen met in January 2017 to come up with the way Cohen would be paid. Of course, Cohen did plead guilty to a federal campaign finance law crime in 2018 stemming from the Daniels hush money. Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger asked Justice Juan Merchant to instruct Costello not to be in contact with members of the defense team. Merchant declined, saying he generally doesn't give that instruction. You can ask him tomorrow whether he was in contact or not, he told Hoffinger. Costello testified that Michael Cohen was suicidal when he met with him in the Regency Hotel after the FBI raided Cohen's office, bank and residence. Costello said Cohen told him that 2 nights before the meeting he was on the roof of the Regency Hotel and he was going to jump off and kill himself because he couldn't handle the ongoing criminal case, Costello said. Costello is answering prosecutor Susan Hoffinger's questions with contentious responses that convey his irritation. He just instructed her to talk into the microphone, please. She didn't react. Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger kicks off the cross-examination of Costello by asking about how and why his firm reached out to Cohen in April 2018. He seems a bit prickly, resisting some questions by saying twice that an email she referred to speaks for itself. You were hoping Mr. Cohen would hire you? She asked. I wasn't hoping anything, Costello said. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall. He later accused Hoffinger of trying to push me into certain answers. I didn't want him as a client, Costello insisted. Trump lawyer Emil Bove has finished his direct examination of Robert Costello. Bove asked Costello if he ever put any pressure on Michael Cohen to do anything, to which Costello replied, no. Costello said he regarded Cohen as a client, despite the fact that they didn't have a formal arrangement, and testified that at some point, his firm sought payment from Cohen for Costello's services. While reporters were briefly removed from the courtroom, Trump's guests were allowed to remain inside. Justice Juan Merchan ordered the courtroom cleared after he admonished Costello about proper decorum in his courtroom. The judge at first cleared the jury from the room and warned Costello not to give side-eye or roll his eyes at him if he didn't agree with his ruling. You don't say geez, the judge said. The judge then requested the jury be brought back in, but then snapped, are you staring me down right now? He then said, clear the courtroom. Journalists in the gallery were then told to leave the room. Before kicking reporters out of the courtroom, Merchan admonished Costello, when there's a witness on the stand, if you don't like my ruling you don't say, geez. And then you don't say, strike it. You don't give me side-eye and you don't roll your eyes. Costello drew a rebuke from Justice Juan Merchan after he said, geez, when the judge sustained an objection by prosecutors during defense lawyer Emil Bove's questioning. The judge leaned over in his direction and said, I'm sorry, multiple times. Costello has a caustic tone as he responds to questioning on the stand. Costello testifies that Cohen told him, Trump knew nothing about the Daniels payment. His testimony directly conflicts with Cohen's statements about Trump's knowledge of, and involvement with, the payments. Robert Costello contradicted Michael Cohen's sworn testimony regarding Trump's knowledge of the Stormy Daniels hush money payment, saying Cohen told him numerous times that Trump knew nothing about those payments. Costello offered a window into his initial meeting with Cohen, which he said took place on April 17, 2018, days after the FBI raided Cohen's properties. Costello said Cohen was absolutely manic at the beginning and throughout that meeting, pacing back and forth, left and right. Costello said Cohen explained what happened during the raids, and said, my life is shattered, my family's life is shattered. Then, Costello said, Cohen asked Costello to explain to me my escape route. Costello said Cohen could make his legal problems disappear by offering prosecutors damaging information about Trump. Costello said Cohen told him 10 times that day, I swear to God, Bob, I don't have anything on Donald Trump. Costello testified that Cohen told him about the Stormy Daniels deal, I don't understand why they're trying to put me in jail over an FING NDA. Asked what Cohen said about Trump's knowledge of the deal, Costello replied, Michael Cohen said numerous times that President Trump knew nothing about those payments. That he did this on his own. And he repeated that numerous times. Merchan ruled that Bove can question Costello about prior inconsistent statements by Cohen and narrow questions about an apparent pressure campaign allegedly directed by Trump. But Merchan warned he would not let the examination become a trial within a trial about the pressure campaign. Bove will not be allowed to question him about whether or not Cohen sought to retain his legal services in 2018. Judge Merchan says he is going to take 5 minutes to mull a ruling on Costello. Don't leave the courtroom, he instructed the lawyers and Trump. Prosecutors have objected to Costello's testimony, or at least the bulk of it. They're not entitled to elicit from Mr. Costello his opinions about Mr. Cohen's credibility, prosecutor Susan Hoffinger said. Trump defense attorney Emil Bove says he's not looking to have Costello give such an opinion, but to contradict some of Cohen's testimony about alleged efforts by Trump to keep Cohen on Trump's side when he came under scrutiny by prosecutors. The whole purpose of this was to make President Trump sound threatening, Bove said. Bove added, part of Mr. Costello's testimony is going to explain certain things Mr. Cohen testified about at this trial were false. The defense attorney pointed to Cohen's claim that he never had any agreement for Costello to represent him. Things got testy as Hoffinger replied, it's entirely collateral. Bove shot back, that he committed perjury. Robert Costello, the witness whom Trump's defense team has just called to the stand, is no fan of Cohen. He is an ally of Rudy Giuliani who tried to persuade Cohen to stay loyal to Trump in 2018 after the FBI raided Cohen's properties. Last week, Costello appeared before a GOP-led House subcommittee and accused Cohen of repeatedly lying on the witness stand during the hush money trial. The judge is excusing the jury in order to continue his conversation with the parties in open court. Daniel Sitko, a paralegal for Todd Blanche, testified about a chart he made that shows Michael Cohen's call history with attorney Robert Costello. Blanche highlighted a call the day before Memorial Day in 2018 that Cohen had with Costello. After Sitko described the data he logged on the call, Blanche stopped his questioning of the paralegal. Earlier today, Blanche had asked Cohen if he had a memory of that call. The questions could be designed to undermine Cohen's claims of having clear memories of short phone calls he made years earlier. One such call, his call to Keith Schiller on October 24, 2016, in which Cohen says he discussed the Stormy Daniels payment with Trump, as key evidence for the prosecution. Just before the prosecution rested, as Todd Blanche finished questioning Michael Cohen, Blanche suggested that Trump was too cheap to have authorized Cohen's hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Did he overpay for things regularly? Blanche asked. No, sir, Cohen replied. Did he happily write checks to lawyers, for example? Blanche asked. No, sir, said Cohen. There was also a question about Trump spending $70 million of his own money on the 2016 campaign. A prosecutor objected, and the judge sustained the objection. Shortly thereafter, Blanche sat down and Cohen was done. Trump is under no obligation to call any witnesses or present any evidence of his own. His lawyers could simply argue that the prosecution did not meet its burden of proof. But Trump's team will present a case, at least a short one. The defense's first witness is Daniel Sitko, a paralegal for Trump's lead lawyer, Todd Blanche. Prosecutors rest their case in Trump's hush money trial. Trump's defense team will now get an opportunity to present its own evidence. Prosecutors in Donald Trump's Manhattan criminal trial rested their case against the former president Monday, bringing an end to more than 4 weeks of testimony from witnesses they've called in their attempt to convince the jury that he orchestrated a scheme to cover up a payment to a porn star. The conclusion of the case from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office moves the trial one step closer to determining whether Trump will become a convicted felon as he runs for president as the presumptive Republican nominee. Though Trump is indicted in 3 other criminal cases, the chances that any of those will go to trial before the November election have dwindled in recent weeks. In the Manhattan case, Trump's team will now have a chance to call their own witnesses and introduce their own evidence. Trump is not obligated to call any witnesses, and the extent of his defense remains unclear. His lawyers have signaled they may call at least one expert witness on campaign finance laws, but the judge sharply limited what that expert can testify about. And they have left open the possibility that Trump himself might testify, a significant risk for a defendant with questionable credibility and a history of doing himself no favors on the witness stand. Prosecutors rested their case at the conclusion of their final witness, Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, who testified for 4 days. Cohen told the jury about what he described as Trump's direct approval of an involvement in falsifying business records to mask a $130,000 payment Cohen made on Trump's behalf to porn star Stormy Daniels on the eve of the 2016 election. The hush money silenced Daniels' claim that she had sex with Trump a decade earlier. During the prosecution's case, jurors also heard from Daniels herself, as well as from several other key witnesses. David Pecker, the former CEO of the National Enquirer's parent company, testified that he struck a deal with Trump in August 2015 to help Trump's presidential campaign by publishing flattering stories about Trump and negative stories about his opponents, and by executing a catch-and-kill operation to suppress potentially damaging stories about Trump. And Keith Davidson, a lawyer who represented Daniels and Karen McDougal, another woman who received hush money after claiming an affair with Trump, described how Cohen attempted to delay payment to Daniels because, Davidson believed, Cohen was trying to kick the can down the road until after the election. Cohen testified that, at Trump's direction, he was doing just that, a crucial piece of evidence that bolsters prosecutors' contention that the payment to Daniels was meant to help Trump's campaign. It's not clear how long the presentation of Trump's defense will last, but the judge presiding over the case, Justice Juan Merchan, said he expects closing arguments to take place next Tuesday, after Memorial Day weekend. Then the jury will begin deliberating. In his final moments being questioned by prosecutors, Cohen testified that as a result of telling the truth about Trump, my entire life has been turned upside down. Cohen said his decision to speak out resulted in him losing his law license, his businesses and his financial security. Blanche started recross-examining Cohen by questioning the testimony, suggesting that Cohen lost his law license because he pleaded guilty to numerous felonies, including some that had nothing to do with Trump. Cohen replied that he lost his license because of the totality of the felonies, including the campaign finance violations as well as the lying to Congress. Prosecution redirective Cohen is over. Blanche is recross-examining him. Michael Cohen testified that he had no doubt that Trump signed off on reimbursing him for the $130,000 hush money payment that Cohen made to Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election. Cohen testified that he wanted to ensure that he was reimbursed, and so he was sure that Trump assented to the arrangement. Cohen added that he had no doubt about it. When asked by prosecutor Susan Hoffinger if Trump said he would reimburse him, Cohen replied, he said that the testimony tracks with what Cohen already said in his testimony under direct examination last week, but prosecutors are using their final questions for Cohen today to reiterate these key points. Cohen testified to the veracity of a still taken from a C-SPAN video that shows Trump bodyguard Keith Schiller alongside Trump, whose face is partially obscured by his arm. Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger read a stipulation agreed to by both prosecutors and defense lawyers that the still was taken from the end of a video that concluded at 7:57 p.m. on October 24, 2016, the precise time when Cohen has testified that he called Schiller to speak to Trump to inform him that Cohen had finalized the Stormy Daniels deal. After much wasted breath, both sides agree to plunge on with the trial. Prosecutors will be able to introduce the C-SPAN stills through Michael Cohen, who's still on the stand, and both sides will stipulate to the time they were taken. The decision means testimony in the case could wrap as soon as today. But perhaps because Trump seems mad about the issue, the judge asks Todd Blanche, I understand it's a strategic decision, but have you discussed this with your client? Blanche says he has. The jury is coming back now for more testimony from Cohen. Trump looked visibly upset as his attorneys and the prosecution argued about whether or not the trial should break early Monday to give C-SPAN the time to get an archivist to New York to testify Tuesday morning. Trump shook his head as the attorneys addressed the issue and at one point stared over at prosecutor Joshua Steinglass with an angry expression on his face. During that session, Trump's defense scored a minor, possibly fleeting victory as Justice Juan Merchan rejected the prosecution's attempt to call one of their own paralegals to the witness stand in order to show jurors a couple of stills from C-SPAN that could demonstrate that Trump and personal aide Keith Schiller were together in October 2016 when Michael Cohen says he called Schiller to get in touch with Trump about the Stormy Daniels payment. Merchan said a C-SPAN rep's testimony earlier in the trial wasn't enough for a paralegal or anybody else to be used to admit anything from the network's archives as authentic just because it was found there. The ruling prompted prosecutor Joshua Steinglass to say they'd like to recall the C-SPAN witness, Robert Browning. We very much object, Blanche said, adding that they have two defense witnesses ready to go. After another break, prosecutors said they would have Browning travel back in the morning. We're back from lunch, and Blanche just told the judge that there is a likelihood that we will rest today, which suggests that Trump won't testify in his own defense. Trial has now officially broken for lunch after the jury was excused about 10 minutes ago. We'll be back at 2:15. After the jury left, lawyers argued over the prosecution's request to admit C-SPAN stills showing Trump aide Keith Schiller with Trump in late October 2016. Prosecutors believe the images will help bolster Michael Cohen's testimony that he talked to Trump by phone on October 24, 2016, after calling Schiller. Cohen said he informed Trump about the Stormy Daniels hush money payment on that phone call. Cohen testified he was extremely skeptical of attorney Robert Costello, who allegedly tried to set up a back channel for Cohen to Trump after he was raided by the FBI in April 2018. I didn't trust him in the way he kept invoking Rudy Giuliani, Cohen said of Costello. He added that he thought anything he told Costello would immediately go directly back to President Trump. The prosecutor may be trying to show that Trump, or those in his inner circle, knew the alleged reimbursements were illegal and wanted to keep Cohen in the fold after the FBI raid. Cohen testified that, in 2019, in order to speak to Manhattan federal prosecutors about lawyer Robert Costello, he signed an agreement that waived any privileges that attached to his communications with Costello. Cohen is explaining more details about the poll manipulation that wound up, in Cohen's account, becoming part of the disguised reimbursement that also included the $130,000 Cohen paid to bottle up Stormy Daniels' story. The poll by CNBC was regarding the most famous businessman in like the last century and, at the beginning of this poll he was polling towards the very, very bottom and it upset him, Cohen said. Cohen said he and Trump agreed to hire a tech firm, Red Finch, to improve his standing through bulk votes, but Trump refused to pay the $50,000 bill because he never surpassed ninth place and CNBC never did a final round. Mr. Trump didn't feel that he got the benefit of what the funds were supposed to go to despite cheating, and refused to make payment, Cohen said. In redirect examination, Cohen reiterated that he never had a retainer agreement with Trump in 2017 in response to questions from prosecutor Susan Hoffinger. There was no legal work that I was to be paid for, Cohen said. The questions strike at the heart of the case because Trump is accused of falsifying business records by mislabeling checks to Cohen and related financial documents as legal expenses. Cohen showed jurors again that the monthly installment payments he received from Trump were allegedly reimbursements, not payments for legal services. Hoffinger asked Cohen if the payments had anything to do with work he Trump or other members of his family. "No, ma'am," Cohen said. Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger opened her redirect examination of Michael Cohen by focusing on a phone call that was a focus of Trump lawyer Todd Blanche's questioning. Blanche had presented Cohen with evidence that in the hours prior to an October 24, 2016, call that Cohen had testified he made in order to inform Trump of the finalization of the Stormy Daniels deal, Cohen had received dozens of harassing phone calls. Cohen conceded, under Blanche's questioning, that he perhaps had placed the call both to tell Trump's bodyguard about the harassment and to inform Trump of the deal. Hoffinger asked if Cohen had a specific recollection of telling Trump about the deal on that call. "Yes," Cohen replied. "Because it was important to you?" Hoffinger asked. "Yes," Cohen said. Hoffinger asked if it was possible that other matters were discussed on that same call. "Yes," Cohen said. Blanche asked if Cohen has a financial interest in the outcome of the trial. Cohen conceded that he did, but disputed Blanche's suggestion that Cohen would benefit more from Trump being convicted. "It's better if he's not, for me, because it gives me more to talk about in the future," Cohen said. Blanche is pressing on with suggestions that Cohen has tried to capitalize on his decision to turn on Trump, noting that Cohen has said he's mulling running for Congress because he has the best name recognition out there. "You said that because of your work and what you've been doing for the past several years going after President Trump?" the defense attorney asked. "I wouldn't characterize it that way," Cohen said. "My name recognition is because of the journey I've been on." "Is it related to Mr. Trump?" "Yes," he said, prompting Blanche to take a mocking tone as he repeated the word, journey. Trump lawyer Todd Blanche is trying to suggest that Michael Cohen has profited from turning on his former boss. Cohen testified that he has earned about $4.4 million since the fall of 2020, when he began hosting podcasts and writing books critical of Trump. That came after a period in which he earned nothing following his guilty pleas in August 2018 and also paid back taxes he owed. Cohen also testified that, with his approval, an individual who previously worked on one of his podcasts is pitching a TV show about his life. The proposed title, Fixer. The questioning got a little testy when Blanche questioned Cohen about how much money he cleared in 2017 through his consulting work and the payments he received from Trump, allegedly for the hush money deal and other sums included in the $420,000 that Cohen received in monthly installments. When asked about the money, Cohen said he was reimbursed. Blanche responded tersely, "We know what your view is about that." Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger objected and Justice Merchant sustained the objection. Blanche is questioning Cohen about his dealings with attorney Robert Costello after Cohen's home and office were searched by the FBI in April 2018. In an email Blanche showed Costello talks about Cohen's idea of reaching out to someone to gather intel on the investigation. Cohen says the person he wanted Costello to consult was Rudy Giuliani, Costello's former boss at the Southern District of New York Federal Prosecutor's Office. Costello said the person had not come up with any info yet. He thought he would have no problem tracking that down, but apparently that has not been the case, Costello wrote. Todd Blanche is trying to show that Cohen changed his tune about Trump's knowledge of the Stormy Daniels deal after Cohen himself realized he was in legal jeopardy over it. Blanche elicited Cohen's testimony that, until the FBI raided Cohen's properties in 2018, he maintained both privately and publicly that Trump was unaware of the Daniels payment. Cohen testified that among the people to whom he maintained that Trump knew nothing about the payment were two personal friends as well as multiple reporters with whom he secretly recorded conversations. Blanche elicited testimony from Cohen that showed he got rich through consulting work in 2017, but did not actually perform much work for his various clients. Cohen said he made more than $4 million through the agreements with companies including AT&T and investment firm Columbus Nova. The clients agreed to pay Cohen tens of thousands of dollars per month and in exchange he advised them sporadically. In the case of AT&T, he had just 20 communications with them over the course of a year. Blanche could potentially be trying to show jurors that even though Cohen did little legal work for Trump in 2017, that arrangement was not unique. Michael Cohen has said he did not have a retainer agreement for his work on behalf of former President Donald Trump, and that the payments he received from Trump in 2017 were part of a scheme to reimburse him for the Stormy Daniels payment. Todd Blanche is trying to demonstrate that Cohen, in fact, did have a legitimate agreement to perform legal work. Blanche displayed an email from Alan Weisselberg dated late January 2017 in which Weisselberg wrote to Cohen, "Please prepare the agreement we discussed so we can pay you monthly." But Cohen testified there was no agreement, and that the monthly payments were to reimburse him for the Daniels deal. Cohen testified that he paid the owner of tech company Redfinch $20,000 in a brown paper bag after he struck a deal with Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg to incorporate the funds to the company in the grossed-up figure Cohen would be paid. Cohen said he withdrew the funds from TD Bank over a number of days and handed the cash to the owner after he came to his office. "You had it in a duffel bag?" Blanche asked. Cohen responded it was a small brown paper bag. Cohen previously testified that he and Weisselberg calculated that Cohen would be reimbursed a total of $420,000 that included the hush money payment to Daniels, and the $50,000 for Redfinch, of which Cohen paid $20,000. Blanche potentially seized on the detail to make the payment seem seedy and unlawful. It also set up a line of questioning about Cohen actually stealing a sum of money that was purportedly supposed to be paid to Redfinch. Blanche suggested Cohen had a multitude of matters he was handling around the time of the Daniels deal, and that perhaps Cohen spoke to Trump about those issues, rather than just about the pending non-disclosure agreement, as Cohen has testified. Blanche noted that around that time, Trump had an opening day ceremony for the old post office building in D.C. and a scheduled interview with George Stephanopoulos that was set to involve Trump and several of his family members. Blanche asked Cohen if perhaps he spoke to Trump about those matters, instead of or in addition to the Daniels deal. But Cohen rejected that suggestion. "My recollection is that I was speaking to him about Stormy Daniels because that was what he tasked me to take care of and that is what I was working on," Cohen said. Blanche pressed him further, asking if his conversations were exclusively about the Daniels deal. "As I recall, yes," Cohen responded. Courthouse. Blanche appears to be trying to introduce the notion that Cohen was juggling multiple personal and professional obligations during the month of October 2016, when he was also handling the Stormy Daniels deal. Cohen has confirmed that he was handling matters related to his taxi medallion business, an investment property with his brother and a separate litigation involving David Pecker, the former CEO of the National Enquirer's publisher, American Media Inc. Cohen also said he was speaking to Pecker and Amis general counsel at the time about an issue involving Tiffany Trump and potential extortion. It's not clear where Blanche is going with this line of questioning. Judge limits scope of testimony from Trump's planned expert witness. Trump's team wanted the expert to testify about details of campaign finance law. Justice Juan Merchan has sharply limited what Trump's planned expert witness can testify about. Trump's defense team wants to call election law expert Brad Smith to testify about federal campaign finance law. But the judge ruled this morning that allowing Smith to testify expansively on that topic would supplant the judge's role to determine what the law is. There is no question this would result in a battle of the experts, which will only serve to confuse, and not assist, the jury, Merchan declared near the beginning of today's court session. Merchan did not block Trump from calling Smith, a former member of the Federal Election Commission. But the judge said he'd be restricted to the basics of the FEC and to general definitions and terms, in campaign finance law, like what counts as a contribution or expenditure. Trump's defense wants Smith to testify about the FEC's policy that expenses that exist, irrespective of a candidacy, are not deemed to be campaign expenditures, evidently as part of an argument that the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels wasn't campaign-related under federal law. Trump lawyer Emil Bove complained to Merchan that prosecutors have focused their case for felony convictions in a way that makes federal campaign law more pivotal than it appeared before the trial. "We're still in a very strange situation because of the way the government has structured these business record charges," Bove said. Prosecutor Matthew Colangelo said there was no surprise because the DA's office laid out in a court filing last November that it might argue that the enhancement to a felony was the result of Trump alleging attempting to violate federal law. Trump's lawyers did not rule out calling Smith despite Merchan's ruling. The judge said he wanted to see in writing the likely testimony before that happens. Trump attorney Todd Blanche picked up his cross-examination of Cohen this morning with a blunt question about how many times he has spoken to reporters since last week about what happened in court. Cohen responded that he spoke to reporters, but said he did not discuss his testimony. He said journalists called him to say hello and check in. Blanche could be trying to show jurors that Cohen loves speaking to the press. He could also be potentially trying to show jurors that Cohen may not be being 100% truthful when he claims he did not speak to reporters about the case. Court is in session this morning and we've begun with an update to our trial timeline. Justice Juan Merchan says it appears that the trial proceedings will wrap this week, but that closing arguments won't take place until next Tuesday, following the day off for Memorial Day. Welcome to the 6th week of Donald Trump's criminal trial, and the first week that could end with a verdict. The trial appears to be heading toward a conclusion, but there are still quite a few questions to resolve before we reach the historic moment. Michael Cohen will resume testifying this morning under cross-examination, and he is expected to complete his time on the witness stand by the afternoon. He is the prosecution's last witness, so Trump's lawyers will start presenting their defense case, if any, once Cohen is done. They've indicated they'll call at least one expert witness, Bradley Smith, a former head of the Federal Election Commission. But Justice Juan Merchan has curtailed the scope of Smith's possible testimony largely to definitions of campaign finance terms, so it is likely to be brief. But Trump's lawyers haven't said whether they might call other people to testify, and the biggest X factor is whether Trump himself will take the stand. If he does, that will extend the trial significantly, and we almost certainly won't see a verdict this week. But there is little legal upside to Trump taking the stand in his own defense, and if he doesn't testify, the judge has indicated that the trial could proceed to closing arguments on Tuesday morning. That would set up the jury to begin deliberating as soon as Tuesday afternoon. Will we find out before the Memorial Day weekend if Trump is a convicted felon or an acquitted man? Stay tuned.
As you leave the page, don't forget to hit the like bell and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so as yet. Thank you.